Welcome back to Some Old AV Guy. My name is Eric, as always. Please like, share, and subscribe. On today's episode, our guest who's joining us is Liz Ramey out of the Massachusetts market. Welcome, Liz.
Hey Eric, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. So, to give our viewers a little bit of an idea of what you do, I understand that you're a technical director and a lighting designer. If you don't mind giving a little background, how did you get into that field of the industry? When did you start? And just give us a little background.
Sure. The shortest version of it is mom put me in a play when I was 7, and I just kind of never left. I went from, doing all the like kids' plays to being a chorus kid to being a theater kid to being like, oh, I actually don't love being on the stage. Like, it's okay, but it's a lot. But there's all this cool stuff happening backstage, and then that led to starting to build scenery in high school. And then things really picked up in college where I, went from doing the college plays to working professionally. And from there, I went into working at a roadhouse in the New Jersey, New York tri-state area. I was very lucky that my university that I wound up at had a really great program to get kids working professionally. My teachers would take us into New York to work on their shows as electricians. We'd be the in-house road team for touring acts and concerts. Yeah, that was where I got my degree in stage management, and I did my first equity theater experiences. And then shortly after that, I worked in the New Jersey, New York area for a couple of years, but I didn't really want to be a New Yorker. I didn't really love the Broadway scene. And the small independent scene was cool, but it was crazy.
Sure.
So I decided to go try my luck out in Texas, where I wound up working with the union at a number of roadhouses, particularly the Frank Irwin Center and the Bass Concert Hall at University of Texas.
Nice.
We did everything. We did big concerts. We did Barnum and Bailey. We did Broadway tours. We did some of the corporate. And then from there, I found myself headed towards Baltimore for a while, where I really started getting into the corporate scene and the political scene. And from there, I wound up doing traveling shows with a production company for a while as a lighting designer and a project manager for smaller breakouts. And then somewhere in all that, I moved to Boston and really wound up very much pulled away from the theater for almost a decade.
Sure.
And just like deep in the corporate scene, some political stuff when I was in the Baltimore, DC area, and then lots of like international conferences and stuff here in Boston, while also doing some traveling myself for international conferences as a lighting designer and a technical director. And then COVID happened,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
all went home.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, I took a break from the industry for a minute while that was happening. And then when I came back, I found myself with this beautiful job at BU as one of their operators for an international broadcast that they had to get their business masters going. It's called AMBA. It's a beautiful program, and I loved it there. And I was doing that, and I was freelancing. And then I got a call from the Strand Theater, and I was like, oh, I could do some weekend dance lighting design. That sounds great.
Sure.
My head is tired of all this audio and all this video, and let's do some dance lighting design. And then I walked into this beautiful 100-year-old building and never left. And they were in need of a technical director, and my resume fit the bill, and yeah, I just never left, and I've been there for almost 2 years now.
That's great. That's great to
Yeah.
hear. I've noticed that a lot. So being from the corporate side myself, I've noticed that lighting really is the only one that is really more fluid between theater and corporate AV. Not saying that audio isn't as well, but but it would seem that it's easier for someone coming from a theater background to get into corporate AV to do lighting, as opposed to someone who has a theater background or for instance, a cruise line audio. It's a little bit more difficult only because you're dealing with the same thing all the time.
Mhm.
Whereas when it comes to lighting and technical direction, it's always changing. It's ever changing because it depends on the show that's in house. It depends on, what artist is coming in, and so it would seem that, at least from my perspective, that it would seem that lighting ha has a lot more opportunities in different professions as opposed to audio or video.
I think that might be true. Because I mean, recording versus live for audio and for video,
Yeah,
definitely different. The yeah, music versus talking heads, definitely different. Versus a script, those are already, yeah, very, very different. Whereas lighting is both the same and different every time,
sure.
right? Like light the face.
You're probably more active in a theater than you would be uh, on a corporate event, unless it's, there's a band playing or they're trying to get the audience pumped up or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's very much true. Although it does kind of depend on the scale, right? Because it goes one of two ways. With corporate, you're either, and I've done both. For lighting, with corporate, you're either like, okay, you've got these six Legos, and it's going to be lights up, lights down, and if you're lucky, there's going to be a couple of lights in the back for a camera, and you're done, right?
Correct. Correct.
Or it's going to be, we have Technicolor elements in all of these booths.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to run around, you're going to set up some 200 uplights and some 50 odd movers, and then over here there's going to be a truss being built for like I mean, I'm thinking back to the conventions in Vegas.
Sure.
Oh yeah, I was also in Las Vegas for a minute between Baltimore and I've wandered. But, you have all of these booths that have like both lighting and audio and video and maybe a video wall and possibly an entire truss full of movers, and they might not be doing cues the same way that theater is,
Yeah.
right? Like I do a hell of a lot more in my theater with my 100 conventionals
Mm-hmm.
than I would ever do in corporate, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all about the angles and the areas. Whereas corporate, they just want it bright.
Yeah. And the difference between lighting and video in that aspect is, in video in a corporate world, you've got a million different cues.
Mm-hmm.
And video on a theatrical point of view, you may have something playing in the a big LED wall and whatnot with different cues, but for the most part, it's going to be either one look or a few looks that you change between.
That's generally true, although I will say I think that is changing.
Yeah.
Because even at the community level and the high school level, because my theater does a broad range. We do all the way from local high schools rent us to be their venue to international concerts,
Hmm.
and then a lot of regional theater. Oh, but as what I was saying is, even at like the community dance and the high school level,
Hmm.
more and more they're wanting video interactive backgrounds, which at our theater we're over 100 years old. Most of our things are very conventional. We're very low tech space
Yeah.
as a general statement. So we have just a a projector that we project onto a muslin cyc. But more and more and more, that's getting consistent use during the dance shows. So
Gotcha.
it is getting to a point where there will be. I mean, it's nowhere near like the camera cuts on a large corporate,
Sure,
but
sure.
it is getting to the point where it's kind of regular for there to be like a different projection for each scene,
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
So you and it's just kind of because I have ADHD. Ooh, I hear something and I kind of fixate on it. Um, you had said the word conventional, and in the lighting industry, conventional, the word conventional kind of has a different meaning as far as a specific type of fixture. So a conventional would be your older light that has just a regular lamp in it, whereas there's more of the corporate industry is moved away from conventionals and has moved into LED lighting. How have you seen the lighting industry change in the years that you started to now, would you say?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm one of the people that has been working through the digital revolution of both lighting and video. It's been very interesting. You're correct that a conventional light refers to anything that doesn't require data. So there's a dimmer, the dimmer goes on, the light goes on, the dimmer goes off. No thinking involved. You can plug it into an outlet if you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching LEDs slowly overtake movers or conventionals my whole career. It's been an interesting learning curve because I'm one of the people that came into this industry because I didn't want to go into computers.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, good luck with that
fortunately,
now.
right, yeah, that's done. But fortunately, the programming still kind of works the same. There's just more parameters, and I mean, what we can do now is spectacular and stunning. Things that we would only have dreamt about in our youth. It is interesting watching spotlight operators prove their worth. I'm thoroughly enjoying just because I'm a little obstinate. I enjoy the humanity fighting back against the rise of the machine.
Sure.
So it brings me joy that we just still can't quite mimic that hands-on guy in a ceiling holding a light effect.
Yeah. And
Uh,
I'm assuming you're referring to a robotic spotlight as opposed to a spotlight operator that just has a fixed spotlight that they move around.
yes, yes. I'm referring to both. There's been a couple of different attempts to like mimic this
Hmm.
in terms of like waves of trends. One trend was to try to have a moving light and then the performer had a receiver. So the light followed, but it was always glitchy. And then now we have the ones that have a human operator at the base, but the light is mounted in the ceiling.
So it's basically just a joystick then.
Yeah, which I find interesting. I haven't worked with them enough to have too much of an opinion,
Hmm.
but the reports I'm hearing back about them are not great in terms of like what operators think and how they sync. So that does just sort of, give me a little bit of joy that you can't replace a guy holding a light bulb in a tube.
And honestly, I don't. We had mentioned it in a previous episode where I don't think personally, I don't think in our lifetime that AI is going to take over the audiovisual industry or the entertainment industry because there's a human element that you just can't seem to replace. You can say, okay, this is this look, and then this is this look, and change different parts from one look to the next. A computer could easily program that. But knowing when to change a look, maybe making that one nuance by, if you have your upstage lights and your or backstage lights, change a little bit in color because of the fact that they're the keyboardist or the guitarist is just walking out of that frame. Um, it's I think there's too much learning still to be done for any of that to be replacing humans altogether.
So, I mean, that's lighting specifically, that's already kind of an argument that every designer has to have with himself a little bit about cueing versus busking.
Mhm.
Um,
And
because when,
for our viewers, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. For our viewers, could you explain what busing is? Because there's a lot of people that watch this that are just getting into the industry and don't really know a whole lot.
absolutely. First off, welcome to anybody who's just new to the industry. Don't let anybody make you feel bad about that. It's everybody's first day someday.
Yeah.
And so when you are busking, that means, well, actually, when you are queuing, that means that you have programmed the lights to do set functions on the hit of a go button at a specific timing, right? Most common one is like lights up or lights down on a 5 second fade would be your most common cue. And then within those, you can sort of determine what colors you want, what brightnesses you want, kind of what the look is. Now, the other way to do it is called busking, which is where you've already also done some programming to get your lights onto different submasters or faders. There's some personal preference between designers and boards there in terms of the lingo. But I always use submasters. And then you have manual control of those submasters in terms of lights up, lights down. So you're literally just pushing the fader up and down. Um, and with that, if you don't know what's going to happen on stage next, you want that control. The community events that we do are actually in some ways more difficult than the theatrical events that we do because there's things like you don't know that anybody's going to be coming on the stage, but you've got your lights set up for your little single cone of light special on your MC who's talking and, introducing the next dance act that's going to come on.
Hmm.
Great. You've been told that it's a pair of tap dancers. And they're gonna go with a follow spot and they want it pink.
Yeah.
Great. So that's what you're set up for.
I see where this is going already.
Right. And then all of a sudden, 10 other dancers come running out of the audience and take position all over the stage. And you're like, well, crap, I got to keep these people from killing themselves.
Yep.
And we want to light them. And oh, this is being broadcast. So, yeah, we really need to light them. So I have faders that are set up so that I can busk on top of any cues that I have for situations like that.
Gotcha.
Um, and yeah, so you're already sort of navigating that. Can you program for the unpredictability of humans
Mm.
and what their lighting night needs are going to be? And then yeah, when you take the human out of there completely, it means that you can't have safeguards.
Correct. I mean,
Yeah.
you can always have a full stage wash backup, but so you had mentioned computers, and in a previous episode, we had spoke to a audio engineer that brought up Dante, and I know personally, I know Dante is also involved in lighting. So have you how have you learned that? How what classes have you taken, or has it been all on-job training?
Full disclosure, I don't actually have to do much with Dante.
Okay.
That's there's one of those things where I've been fortunate enough to be management when that's needed for the most part.
There you
So
go.
it's somebody else's problem. And then now I'm in this very low tech theater. So our soundboard now has Dante.
Gotcha.
But fortunately I have a sound engineer that handles the entire sound department. I don't have to be very involved. So I've mostly avoided the nine circles at the moment. It's going to be time real soon.
Sure.
Yeah, that's about all I have to say on
Got
Dante.
it. So you had brought up starting off in a theater, and for someone who wants to get into either the corporate lighting world or the travel or tour rather or the theater realm, what would you say as far as a recommendation? How should they get involved? Should they go volunteer somewhere? If let's just say, I've got a hankering to do some lighting and I want to go work for a theater, but I have zero experience, where would I start?
Volunteering is good. Volunteering is good. Low level GAV work, if you're willing to work hard, is also, if you want to go corporate side, there's there's a lot of unskilled, I mean, unskilled, less trained
Correct.
labor involved, right? And if you show up and you're the guy that's always willing to push the case and always willing to tape the cables and always willing to ask the questions, you will become valuable. For me, it was, even though I had a degree in stage management and I knew, I went to Kane University and studied theater with a specialty in lighting design, stage management, and playwriting. It's a lot of diversification, but
Sure.
I managed to get through it all. But to me, even with that background, it was shocking when my bosses started to be like, no, Liz, we don't need you to push cases. We don't even need you to program. We need your lists. Please give me your lists.
Yep.
So it is about knowing the latest and greatest technology, but it's also about being part of a team and being willing to learn and being willing to take the low job and just do what needs to be done. Don't make it about the ego. Just, okay, there's an event happening here. Is there a chance to learn? Is this going to introduce me to people that might be doing what I want to do?
Yeah.
Great. Go learn. Get paid if you can, because it's a pirate's industry. We're all mercenaries. But if you can't get paid and you can learn and you can remember why you want to do this, go do it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I would gather to say that someone wanting to get into theatrical lighting already has some sort of an in at their high school as far as being a stagehand or being a set, designer, builder, or whatever. And, they reach out to their local theater looking to see if there's any open spaces because I'd assume, and this is just because I don't come from a theater background, I'd assume that when you have a large production coming in, it's not the same people that are working at the theater day in, day out. You need extras to come help from somewhere, whether it's a union or,
Absolutely. I would say getting into theater in a way that gets you paid is a little tricky.
sure,
One of your best ways in, if you're young, is to join up with the union because they will protect you. It gets a little trickier if you're on the older side because it is seniority based,
of course.
not knowledge based as a general statement. But you will find some incredibly talented, dedicated people, and the union gives great benefits. Get in with IATSE if you can. The experiences that I had, I wasn't IATSE, I was yellow card in the theaters that I worked in Austin, Texas.
Hmm.
But the protections, the organization, and just the level of professionalism is something that you can't learn volunteering in your local community theater.
Yeah,
Your local community theater is great. It's going to give you knowledge. It's going to give you experience. It's going to give you passion, but it's also going to give you bad habits.
yeah,
Um, it becomes a how do we get the job done mentality,
exactly.
right? Which is great, but the answer has to be safely.
Yeah, yeah,
And the union will both get you paid and teach you how to move literal mountains of lights safely.
Correct. Correct. There's a reason why it takes a special crew to bring out the stage for the halftime show at the Super Bowl. I can put a link down in the description of a video of it happening a few years ago. It is a fully orchestrated, planned out event, and it's amazing to see what these guys do. But they plan it, pretty much after the Super Bowl is over with, the next year they're planning the next one.
Oh yeah.
And I'd assume that it pretty much, in a whole lot smaller scale, works the same in theater, where you have one production that comes in for, I don't know, a couple weeks. I'm not sure how long they usually last. And then once that last show ends and that production loads out, you guys are just getting ready for the next one to come in.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're on a little break at the moment. Thankfully, theater's dark for a little bit, but we've got a team of people coming in to use the space as a filming space.
Nice.
So it'll need some of our lighting, and then we are right into the next season. We kick off with a beautiful play called Our Story, which is a fusion of monologues, dance, and it tells the history of being Black in America. And it's a beautiful play. I don't have the right words about it,
Sure.
but it will break your heart and make you think. And it's very current, it's very modern, and they update it every single year. It is a show that's sort of in rep, but also continuously evolving.
Hmm.
The company is a family that has come together to make this sort of their mission is to tell the Black history story. And then our march has several other dance troupes that also do Black history. Our most notable one will be We Move in Color, Juneteenth.
Nice.
They go to the Kennedy Center as well as with us, and they are gathering really some buzz. So they're a pleasure to work with. They're headed by a beautiful man named Wyatt. Apparently last year, so speaking of conventionals versus LEDs, right?
Yes.
Here's a story for the gearheads. My lighting design did not translate to their system well at all because my lighting design is very conventional based. So it's based off of conventional color mixing, and I do it all in RGB scale as a general statement. For anybody that doesn't know the primary colors of light, red, green, and blue, RGB. And then color mixing, you're mixing the different colors of light, right? You want purple, you've got a red light and a blue light, and then you're deciding are they shooting from the same angle or a different angle or whatever. But the purpose is to make purple. LED lights don't really color mix the same way, and their shadows are completely different.
That is so true.
And if you want an orange light, it looks ridiculous to have a red LED light and a green LED light next to each other. It's not going to read. It's not going to do what it's supposed to do with the shadows. So they were trying to transfer my fully conventional design into this very high-tech space, and it just they got there and they were happy with it, and they're very pleased. But next year I might be coming with them to help them out because We Move in Color, it is all about the rainbow of humanity, and there's all of these beautiful moments where they're playing with the shadows, and the fact that the shadows are multicolor, playing off of them and reflecting differently on the dark skin versus the light skin versus you have the white fabric over here versus the red fabric over there. It's important how the shadows are playing. So long story short, I may go with them next
Nice,
year.
nice.
Help them translate the plot as we continue to like workshop through.
Sure. So you had mentioned diversity, but really more in regards to your knowledge that you identify as female, and I was wondering how that has affected your progression through your career. Obviously, I would assume to say that there may have been more struggles earlier in your career because we have evolved as a society to really push equality. But can you mention on how you've been able to overcome some of those struggles?
Sure. I would actually say the biggest struggles were in really entering management and being in middle management. Getting into the field there, I was very lucky to have strong female mentors,
Mm,
and to be in the tri-state area, which was very woman led. I had more female mentors than I did male mentors, and they were all in positions of power. And they were all like, "Okay, kid, here, this is the scale. Here's how you do it."
nice.
Yeah, I was very lucky in that way. But it was then getting out in the world and being in sort of those middle management. I am an ME. I'm one of many crew leads. Those sort of low level management positions where there's a type of man that just doesn't want to listen. And then there's another type of man that just wants to overteach, which is always well intentioned, but
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that's one of my biggest faults is I overteach just because of the fact that I want to make sure the other person understands. And it sometimes comes across as micromanaging.
well, and also like you shouldn't try to teach your boss
True.
unless they ask.
That is very
Right?
true.
If they say like, "Oh shit, that's the new model. I don't know how to work that one. Can you show me a trick or two?" Great, be a bro, show them. But if they're saying, "Okay, I'm going to go set this thing up over here," there was just a little switcher thing. I think it was a Barco of some sort, and I was like, "Okay, I'm going to go set this up over here," as
Hmm.
the technicians are taping cables, as my GAV should be doing.
Yep.
And I was there as a project manager for breakouts and a small mini GS. And one of my technicians comes and takes the equipment out of my hands and says, "I'll show you how to do this," and walks away.
No.
Which I follow him. I'm like, "Yo, come back." I take it back and I'm going to set this up. The man then stands there as I'm like down, setting the equipment up with his crotch right here, watching me set it up for the entire time.
Uh,
Pro tip, ladies and anybody who fits the profile where these sort of things happen, report it, report it, report it, report it. I've held my tongue way too many times for things.
yeah. And honestly, it if for, I think for too long because when I started in this industry in the mid 90s, it really was the old boys club.
Mhm.
And you know, uh, I came from upstate New York, so there weren't very many African Americans in this industry. There weren't any females in this industry, at least from in my small bubble. That's just the way things were, and people didn't know any better. And the ones that did were too afraid to say anything. And nowadays, there's absolutely no excuse for that.
Well, yeah, and I think I chose that story in particular because I believe that is one of the well-intentioned ones,
Sure.
right? Like,
Hmm.
I think he was older than I was. He knew he was older than I was. And I think he legitimately thought he knew something I didn't know and wanted to share knowledge. I believe his intentions were good. Those intentions sort of cease to matter when physically he couldn't respect my space the same way that he would respect another man's,
Correct.
right? Which is why I say report, because there's so much well-intentioned, like there's so much well-intentioned, but some of it isn't helpful. Like I know that a lot of times you'll see like girls on a crew give each other a hug.
Hmm.
But as a woman, there's also times then where you walk into a ballroom and every man in the ballroom is shaking hands with each other. And then every man in the ballroom goes to hug you. And like it's cool. We're bros, we're friends. I get
Ah,
it. There's times where we want to hug.
yeah,
But like even if it's 50 of my favorite colleagues, I don't want to walk into a room and hug 50 people if nobody else is hugging. That's
exactly.
weird.
Exactly.
Like it's
Now,
well intentioned,
me personally,
but
I'm a hugger. However, and I hug men, women, doesn't matter. However, I always ask, may I give you a hug? And
sure.
if the person says no, then of course I respect their boundaries. So, but that's
Yeah,
just me.
yeah. No, totally. And like I don't get me wrong, I enjoy a good hug, right? Like I'm laughing when I'm saying that because I am thinking of like 20 of my favorite colleagues that I used to travel with.
Mm,
And like the love was real, the love was palpable. But also if also like read the vibe. Like right, if
absolutely.
we're all hugging, we're all hugging. It's great.
Yeah. So that being said, and this kind of brings up a point that I never thought I'd actually talk about, but I'm actually really interested in this. Knowing our industry, knowing that it's, the salty sailor, uh, the the environment of the AV industry has evolved um, with social norms. So, you know, teasing will happen no matter what we do in our industry because this industry is kind of built on this locker room. Hey, so and so, can you hurry it up there, slowpoke or whatever. And and I think what people are trying, at least people my age, are trying to navigate is where's the fine line between what's appropriate and what's not. In regards to teasing, because teasing just always will happen and still does happen. But you got to know it, like you said earlier. You got to know your audience. If you're 50 guys deep and you have one female on the show, wait till that female decides that she's going to tease somebody and then it's open,
Mhm.
it's open season. But you just have to be cognizant of you don't know where people are at. Personally, I think somebody who's new to the industry may be taken aback by how harsh guys can be. And you kind of have to have a thick skin when it comes to that. But at the same token, if there's something that bothers you, absolutely speak out because otherwise no one's going to know.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that's a really tricky one because it'd be no fun if we weren't teasing each other,
Exactly.
right? The like I mean, so I now work with an old rope hemp system, right? So it's literally like counterweighted. So you have guys like heaving the ropes, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the like heave your scurvy dogs jokes are like abounding, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Be no fun if there weren't a few that's what she said jokes and all that. Like you do have to have a little bit of a thick skin because it is generally all intended in good humor. Um, but also be aware of your audience, be aware of the surroundings, right?
Correct. Correct.
Like,
You just said something that kind of triggered a question for me. Um, and you had said Emmy earlier, which for those that don't understand, Emmy is a master electrician. So coming from my background, which is hotel AV and then touring AV and then freelance AV, the lighting director and the ME were two separate things. Now, I don't know if it's different in theater where the lighting director and the ME both are the same person, but it seems as though my views have changed and someone who is a lighting director should always be able to know electricity and current path and all that kind of stuff. Um, where did that come in? Is that do you have a different point of view regarding that, or?
so the reason I was sort of laughing earlier is it depends on your budget, but yeah, in theater they definitely should be separate, unless your budget is so small that you can't.
Sure.
But if you can't ME, you shouldn't be an L1
Yeah.
because there there's a mass workload of figuring out where the lights are going to go, getting the lights into place, motivating the team, getting it cabled, getting it programmed, ringing it out, and getting it in the air. And then there's all of the programming. It's a lot for one person, especially depending on the scale.
Hmm.
But if you can't do the ME job as an L1 or a lighting director or a lighting designer, any of the three, you're going to set it up to fail because you're not going to have your power distributed right when it comes to where you put your lighting instruments.
Hmm.
You're not going to have your pieces kind of organized in a way that will help you succeed.
Yeah.
Because as the director, it's your job to come up with sort of the vision of what you're going to do and the basics of how you're going to do it. And then the ME comes in and kind of helps you get the details of exactly what, where, how, and get the crew going and leads the crew so you can then move forward to the next steps of programming. And you've sort of given them a list of the pieces that you need and how you need them so you can continue on with your job.
Yeah.
But if you don't know how to do their job, you can't appropriately pass it off to them.
Correct.
You
Correct.
don't know what pieces to ask for.
I cannot stress enough how important it is to guys who are not MEs. Don't touch the distro. Just
Oh my
don't
God,
do it.
yes.
I don't care if anyone's told you to do it. Don't touch the distro. It is extremely dangerous. It's not like you're dealing with house power where, if you stick a fork in an outlet, you're going to get a shock, but it's not going to kill you.
Mhm.
When you deal with corporate power, deal with convention power, deal with theater power, this is, two, what is it, 240,
Mhm.
uh, three
There's
phase.
400
Yeah.
as
And
well.
it's almost a good chance, there's a high probability you're going to get killed. So if you don't know what you're doing, ask.
Yeah, that's absolutely a good point because things like touching the distro or disconnecting really any kind of feeder is generally a conversation between venue and show leads,
Correct.
right? And if you are not one of those two people, don't touch it. You don't know. Maybe there's one last motor that's up in the air that's being powered by that.
Yeah.
You don't know whether or not it's hot. And you also need to make sure that you're disconnecting it in the right order. And like
Correct.
there's precautions. You
Correct.
don't just, everybody wants to show what they know, but sometimes the best thing you can show is a little caution.
Yes. Completely agree. So two more questions before I let you go. What have you done in your career regarding lighting design or technical direction that was the most memorable moment for you?
I mean, this is actually kind of a low level job, but for me it would be the weekend I spotlit Barnum and Bailey. I know it's like,
No, that's cool. Everybody has
but
their thing
it
they
was
enjoy.
just super fun to like not shine the light in the elephant's eye because apparently they can rampage if you
Oh,
hit them in the eyeball with the spotlight. Just no pressure. But yeah, I mean, just honestly, that was probably like it's low level, but it's probably the most fun I've had in my career is spotlighting all the acrobats. I got to do the lady as she sat on the elephant's head. Again, making sure I was small enough to not, cause a rampage. And there's like this fun moment they like shot up into the rafters, and then we had to catch them drifting down as they were um, doing all these acrobatics. Yeah, I think that's probably the one.
that's awesome. Um, and then being in this industry for some time now, I can say that there have been multiple people that I have worked with that did what I do now. And can you think of a time or a moment where someone that was in a TD position or was in a lighting engineer or lighting design position that really inspired you and you're like, yes, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing?
That's pretty easy. Um, we've got my mentor, Stacy, who
Mhm.
was out in the world doing stage management and lighting and everything you could think of, who like taught me on a boots on the ground level how to go down to the fact of like how to deal with the dudes that didn't want you there
Mhm.
and make sure you bring a snack for yourself and for everybody and the value of being a stage mom and just like how you keep order, whether it's a house full of 1,000 people ready for a concert or whether you've got a stage full of 200 kids, how you manage to find order the chaos.
Nice.
And then also my professor Nadine, uh, who is a very multi-talented woman. She's now retired to being a watercolorist. Um, and she taught me how to be tough. She taught me how to color mix. She taught me how to paint. Um, and she also taught me how to manage a room full of people ready to have a live event.
Sure.
Her stage management training, in addition to us like making books and things, she'd have things on her test like, what do you do if you see an armed man running for the stage? What do you do if you see a gel frame hanging from a light right above a dancer's head and you know she's
Hmm.
about to kick stomp? These like bizarre real world scenarios that she was pulling from her long and diverse career, that we'd have to like, well, shit, is there a right answer? And like,
Yeah,
fortunately, it was very
exactly.
open ended of like, do something. What you do is something,
Something.
and hope it's effective.
Yes.
But as I said, I was very lucky to have come of age in New Jersey, because I had these great role models that were just there waiting for me, which was a complete blessing. Because if I'd had to fight for it from the start, I don't know if I'd have come as far as I have.
Right.
I'm a peaceful person. I don't like to fight. I just want to
Yeah,
be pals.
me too. Me too.
Go
I'm
where you're
right there with
wanted.
you. I'm right there with you. One last thing. Do you want to promote the theater you work at or a program coming through?
Sure. The Strand Theater in Dorchester, Massachusetts. We are right in Upham's Corner in Boston. We do. Let me read you our mission statement because we do a beautiful, diverse amount of works. The Strand Theater is a venue for a diverse range of performing arts, cultural programming, and community events. Its mission is twofold: to engage the multicultural residents of Boston with a special commitment to youth and the Upham Corner community, and to act as a catalyst in strengthening the fabric of the neighborhood. Look, we've been around for over 100 years. We are where the Boston kids graduate and where the young artists come to kind of formulate their ideas. We have a thriving Caribbean population that does beautiful music on a regular basis. We have international movie premieres. Sometimes people say, "Oh, the Strand Theater, is that still open?" We are open. We are dancing. We are making films. We are premiering films. We have plays that come through every year. Come see Company One all summer this year. They come through every year for all of July. I don't remember the name of their program, but they do incredible work. And yeah, that's about all I got.
Great. Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate your time. And to everyone else, we'll see you on the next gig.
Thank you, Eric. It's been a pleasure.